Hello Starlight, welcome back to my channel. Today we're beginning year 6 of the Enchanted Ones, the year where Hogwarts stops feeling like a school and starts feeling like the edge of a battlefield. As the Wizarding War creeps ever closer, Hayley and Remus finally stop hiding their feelings, while Sirius and Iris face the weight of fear, trauma, and a future neither of them believes they're guaranteed to have. James continues growing into the leader everyone needs, but even he can't stop the cracks spreading through the Marauders as childhood slowly slips away. Meanwhile, Hayley's mysterious magic evolves in ways no one can explain. The castle itself seems to recognize her, ancient enchantments awaken in her presence, and Hogwarts begins responding to her emotions as though the stones are alive. With every passing day, it's becoming clear that Hayley is connected to something far older and far more powerful than anyone realizes. But the war refuses to stay outside the castle walls. Death Eater attacks bring the danger directly to Hogwarts' doorstep, forcing the students to become soldiers long before they're ready. Friendships are tested, families are torn apart, first kisses bring moments of hope, and heartbreaking losses remind everyone just how fragile peace has become. By the end of the year, Hogwarts says goodbye to another generation. A beautiful wedding offers one final glimpse of happiness before unimaginable grief changes the Potter family forever, marking the true end of childhood and the beginning of the First Wizarding War. If you enjoy emotional character moments, slow-burn romance, magical mysteries, Marauders-era friendships, and stories where hope shines brightest in the darkest times, then I hope you'll enjoy year 6 of the Enchanted Ones. So grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and let's return to Hogwarts for the year that changes everything. Chapter 61, The Things He Never Says. Time skip home, year 6. The kitchen of Potter Manor was the only place in Britain that felt truly safe. It smelled of cinnamon, old books, and the cedarwood aftershave Fleamont had worn for 40 years. "Move over, Prongs, you're hovering," Hayley teased, nudging James with her elbow as they stood over a large pot of stew. "I'm not hovering, I'm supervising," James retorted. Though he was currently wearing a ridiculous apron, Euphemia had enchanted to sing "A Cauldron Full of Hot Strong Love" whenever someone stirred too slowly. Across the wooden table, Fleamont was showing Euphemia a series of sketches for a new potion vial. He paused, looking up at his children with a soft, tired smile. The war was aging him. His hair was more silver than black these days, but his eyes still held that mischievous Potter spark. "You two look like you did when you were 7, Fleamont chuckled. "Fighting over who gets to lick the spoon." "Hayley cheated then, and she's cheating now," James grumbled, though he reached over and affectionately ruffled her hair. Euphemia stood up, walking over to wrap her arms around both of them from behind. She was small, but she was the sun around which they all orbited. She kissed James's cheek, then Hayley's. "My brave ones," she whispered. "No matter what the papers say, when you are in this kitchen, the world is quiet. Remember that." Hayley leaned back into her mother's warmth, her enchantment magic purring like a cat in her chest. For a moment, the dread of the future vanished. There was only the steam from the pot and the sound of her father's laughter. She didn't know it was one of the last times the 4 of them would be whole and happy. She only knew that she wanted to bottle this moment and keep it forever. The transition back to Hogwarts felt like being dunked in ice water. The hospital wing was a cavern of antiseptic smells and moonlight. Outside, the Scottish winter howled, a predatory wind clawing at the stone. Hayley sat on the edge of a chair, her hands tucked into her sleeves to stop their trembling. She had been there for hours. Madame Pomfrey had finally retired to her office, leaving the girl as the sole sentinel for the boy behind the screens. When the curtains finally parted, Remus looked less like a boy and more like a ghost. He was pale, his skin mapped with fresh, angry welts and deep, jagged lacerations that bled through the crisp white linen of his bandages. He moved as if his bones were made of glass. "Hayley," he rasped, his voice a dry husk. "You shouldn't be here, it's freezing." "I'm not leaving you, Remus." She stood up, moving with a quiet, practiced grace. She reached for the bowl of warm water and a fresh cloth. Remus tried to flinch away, a reflexive twitch of shame, but his body betrayed him with a hiss of pain. "I can do it," he whispered, his eyes downcast. "I'm used to it." "Let me," Hayley replied, her voice soft but unyielding. In the silence of the infirmary, she began to wash the dried blood from his collarbone. Her magic hummed beneath her skin, a low, thrumming vibration that seemed to pull the chill from the air around them. Remus watched her, his breath hitching. The intimacy of the moment was suffocating. Suddenly, he caught her wrist. His grip was weak, but his eyes were burning with a desperate, terrified intensity. "Why are you doing this?" he choked out. "I'm terrified, Hayley. I'm terrified of needing you. I'm terrified that one day you'll look at me and all you'll feel is pity. That you'll wake up and realize that loving a monster is too much work for any sane person." Hayley didn't pull away. She leaned forward until her forehead brushed his. "I don't pity you, Remus Lupin," she whispered, the words vibrating against his skin. "I love you, and love isn't a chore. It's the only thing that makes the rest of this world bearable." The confession acted like a physical blow. Remus's emotional walls, built over years of self-loathing, didn't just crack, they disintegrated. He let out a broken, shuddering breath and leaned into her, burying his face in the crook of her neck. As the sun began to peek over the horizon, he pulled back just enough to press a slow, lingering kiss to her forehead, treating her as if she were the most sacred thing he had ever touched. Chapter 62, The Boy Who Stayed. Time skip girls' dormitory. The girls' dormitory had a new, silent inhabitant. It started with a creak of a floorboard and the scent of leather and expensive tobacco. Sirius Black had stopped sleeping. The nightmares of Grimmauld Place, fueled by the growing darkness in the world, had become a relentless tide. Iris would wake up at 3:00 a.m. to find a dark shadow slumped at the foot of her bed. She never sent him away. She would simply shift over, lifting the duvet in an unspoken invitation. One night, the moon was obscured by heavy clouds, leaving the room in a charcoal haze. Iris felt Sirius sitting upright, his back against the bedpost. He wasn't moving, he wasn't even breathing deeply. "Sirius," she whispered. He didn't turn around. "Do you ever feel like happiness is just waiting to be taken back, Iris?" His voice was hollow, stripped of its usual bravado. "Like we're just borrowing it, and any second now, the universe is going to realize it made a mistake and demand it all back with interest." Iris sat up, her heart aching. This was the boy beneath the leather jacket and the smirk, a boy who was terrified that his bloodline was a destiny he couldn't escape. "You aren't them, Sirius," she said, reaching out to trace the line of his jaw. "Sometimes I look in the mirror and I see my mother's eyes," he whispered. "I'm so dependent on you, Iris. It scares me. If you leave, there's nothing left of the person I'm trying to be." Iris didn't offer a platitude. She simply reached out and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. She held on tight, anchored him to the present, until the tension finally bled out of his shoulders and he drifted into a shallow, fitful sleep. Chapter 63, The Castle Knows. Time skip classes. Hogwarts was changing, or perhaps it was simply waking up to meet Hayley. As the news of the war grew grimmer, headlines of disappearances in the Daily Prophet, students weeping over letters in the Great Hall. Hayley's magic began to bleed into the stones of the school. When she felt a surge of panic during a transfiguration lesson, the candles in the room flickered and dimmed in unison. When she was lost in thought, the grand staircases would groan and shift specifically to lead her where she needed to go. Once, in a fit of overwhelming grief for a family friend who had gone missing, she had turned entirely invisible in the middle of the library, the light simply bending around her as if the castle were helping her hide. The portraits whispered, "Potter," as she passed, their painted eyes full of a strange, ancient reverence. "She's vibrating," Remus whispered to James as they watched Hayley walk toward the lake. "The air around her. It feels like it's waiting for a command." Remus became her shadow. He didn't hover, but he was always there, a steadying hand on her waist when the whispers of the castle became too loud. One evening, standing alone in a deserted corridor, Hayley pressed her palm against the cold stone. "Hayley." The voice didn't come from a person. It hummed through the masonry, a deep, tectonic vibration. The castle wasn't just a building anymore, it was an ally, and it was terrified for her. Chapter 64, The Fight Time Skip Common Room. The tension finally broke in a burst of jagged glass and shouting. Iris had caught Sirius laughing with James about a dangerous stunt involving a rogue bludger. A joke meant to mask the fact that Sirius had spent the afternoon staring at a letter from his brother, Regulus, that he refused to open. "Stop it," Iris shouted, slamming her book down in the common room. "Stop pretending everything is a bloody joke, Sirius. We're halfway to a war and you're acting like a child." Sirius spun around, his eyes flashing gray fire. "Maybe I'd rather be a child than live in the reality you're so obsessed with, Iris. You want me to be real. Fine. You think loving me ends well for anyone. Look at my family. Look at what happens to people who get close to a black." "I am not your mother, and I am not your brother," Iris screamed back. "I am the girl who holds you while you shake at night. Don't you dare use them as an excuse to push me away." "Maybe I should push you away," Sirius roared, "before I ruin you too." He turned and bolted out the portrait hole. A moment later, a large black dog tore down the corridor. Iris found him hours later by the Black Lake. The rain was starting to turn to sleet. Hadfoot was sitting at the water's edge, looking small against the vast, dark horizon. Iris didn't say a word. She sat down in the mud beside him, her expensive robes soaking through. She just sat. After an hour, the dog let out a low whimper and rested his heavy head in her lap. Iris rested her hand on his wet fur. There were no apologies, yet just the silent admission that they were both terrified, and they were both still there. Chapter 65, The First Kiss. Time skip, Astronomy Tower. The Astronomy Tower was a crown of ice and stars. Snow fell in silent, heavy flakes, coating the stone battlements in a layer of white velvet. "I'm scared of it, Remus," Hayley whispered, looking at her hands. A small spark of blue light danced between her fingertips, unbidden. "The way the castle looks at me, the way the magic feels like it wants to burst out of my skin. What if I'm not strong enough to hold it?" Remus stepped closer, his breath a plume of white in the freezing air. He took her hands in his, the sparks tingling against his palms. "Then let it out," he said softly. "You don't have to carry the world alone, Hayley. I've spent my life afraid of the monster inside me, but I've realized I'm more afraid of losing you than I am of the moon. I'd rather be a monster with you than a man without you." Hayley looked up, her eyes bright with tears. "You aren't a monster." "I am," he whispered, "but I'm your monster." He leaned in, hesitant, giving her every second to turn away. When their lips finally met, it wasn't a firework. It was a slow, deep ache being soothed. It was the taste of winter and peppermint, the feeling of two fractured souls finally clicking into place. They stood there for a long time, foreheads pressed together, while the snow built a world of white around them. Chapter 66, The Cracks Between Boys' Time Skip Hallway. The Marauders were growing up, and it was a painful process. James had changed the most. The arrogance had been replaced by a quiet, steady responsibility. He was the one organizing the defense circles. He was the one making sure Peter didn't fall behind in his studies. Lily Evans noticed. She noticed the way James didn't brag about his Quidditch saves anymore. She noticed the way he sat with a crying first year for an hour in the Great Hall. One afternoon, she watched him walk Sirius away from a burgeoning fight with a group of Slytherins, his hand firm on Sirius's shoulder, speaking in a low, calming voice. "He's different," Lily murmured to Hayley as they watched them from across the library. "He had to be," Hayley replied sadly. "We all did." But the cracks were showing. Sirius was becoming more reckless, looking for fights to drown out his thoughts. Remus was withdrawing into his books, terrified of the impending draft. And Peter Peter was becoming a shadow, his laughter always a second too late, his eyes full of a nervous hunger to belong. One night, the four boys were laughing in the common room over a smuggled bottle of fire whiskey. To an outsider, they looked perfect. But Hayley, watching from the stairs, saw the truth. They were clenching their teeth, trying to hold onto the last threads of their childhood before the world tore them away. Chapter 67, Bloodlines Time Skip, Common Room. When Sirius returned from the Christmas holiday, he looked like he had been through a war already. He was gaunt, his cheekbones sharp enough to cut. He moved with a limp he refused to acknowledge, and he kept his sleeves pulled down to his knuckles. Iris found him in an empty classroom, staring blankly at a chalkboard. When she reached for him, he flinched. She pulled his sleeve back, revealing the dark, blooming bruises on his forearms and the marks of a lesson from his mother. "Regulus wouldn't look at me," Sirius whispered, his voice cracking. "He was wearing the robes, Iris, the ones with the serpent. He's gone, they've got him." "We'll get him back," Iris said, though she knew it was a lie. "No, there is no coming back from that house." Sirius suddenly collapsed into her, his body shaking with the force of his silent sobs. It was the first time he had ever truly broken in front of her. He cried for the brother he had lost, the family he hated, and the terrifying realization that he was truly, utterly alone in the world, but save for the girl holding him. Chapter 68, The Breaking Point Time Skip, Gryffindor Boys' Dormitory. The transition from victim to survivor was not a clean one. In the weeks following Sirius's return, the atmosphere in the tower shifted from the warmth of a holiday to the stifling tension of a sick room. Sirius didn't speak of that classroom anymore, nor did he mention the bruises that were slowly fading from purple to a sickly yellow. Instead, he retreated into a hollow version of himself. He laughed at James's jokes, but the sound never reached his eyes. He ate because Remus pushed a plate in front of him, and he slept only when exhaustion finally overrode the nightmares of Grimmauld Place. "He's spinning out," James whispered one night, packing the narrow space between their four posters. "He's going to do something stupid, Remus. I can feel it." Remus didn't look up from his book, though he hadn't turned a page in an hour. "He's mourning, James. You can't rush that. He didn't just lose a family. He lost his brother to the very thing we're supposed to be fighting." The breaking point didn't come with a shout or an explosion. It came in the middle of a transfiguration essay. Sirius suddenly snapped his quill in half, the black ink splattering across his parchment like a fresh wound. "I can't just sit here," Sirius said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "I can't sit in lessons learning how to turn a teapot into a tortoise while Regulus is, while they're out there." "Sirius, sit down," Peter squeaked, shrinking back. "No," Sirius stood up, his chair screeching against the floor. "The Order, the Ministry, and everyone is waiting for the right moment. But the war is already inside the house. It's in the blood." He turned to Iris, who had been watching him from the doorway. The desperation in his gaze was a plea for an escape he knew didn't exist. He wasn't just angry at his parents or the Dark Lord. He was angry at the silence of the castle walls that kept them safe, while the world outside began to burn. That night they didn't study. They didn't pull pranks. The Marauders sat in a circle on the floor, the map spread out between them, watching the tiny ink dots of people who had no idea how fragile their peace was. "If we're going to be in this," Sirius said, looking at each of them in turn, "we're in it all the way. No more games." The pact was silent, sealed in the grim set of their jaws, and the way James reached out to grip Sirius's shoulder. They were still wearing school sweaters, but the weight of the world had finally settled on their shoulders, heavy and permanent. The innocence of Hogwarts was a thin veil, and Sirius Black had just reached out to tear it away. Chapter 69, right in front of her time skip, Hogsmeade. The war touched them on a Tuesday. A routine trip to Hogsmeade turned into a nightmare when a series of explosions rocked the high street. Dark figures in masks emerged from the smoke. Not a full invasion, but a calculated strike. Chaos erupted. Hayley felt a cold, ancient surge of power rise from the soles of her feet. As a stray curse flew toward a group of younger students, she didn't even think. She thrust her hand out, and the ground itself rose up, and a wall of cobblestone and earth to shield them. The air around her screamed. Remus was a blur of motion, his protective instincts pushed to the brink of a partial shift. He stood over Hayley, his teeth bared, casting shield charms with a ferocity that made the air shimmer. Sirius refused to move from Iris's side, his wand a steady, lethal extension of his arm. When the Aurors finally arrived and the attackers vanished into the mist, the group sat in the wreckage of Honeydukes. James had a cut over his eye. Peter was shaking so hard his teeth chatted. For the first time, death wasn't a story in the paper. It was the smell of ozone and the sight of blood on the snow. They weren't students anymore. They were soldiers who hadn't been asked. Chapter 70. Until tomorrow time skip Hogwarts. The end-of-year feast was usually a riot of color and noise. But this year, the air in the Great Hall felt thick with the realization that for the 7th years, this was the end of the world as they knew it. The enchanted ceiling reflected a sunset of bruised purples and burnt oranges, a sky that looked like a goodbye. Dumbledore stood, his silhouette tall and thin against the candlelight. He didn't give his usual eccentric speech. He looked out at the students, at James and Lily sitting shoulder to shoulder, at Sirius and Iris whispering in the shadows, at Remus and Hayley's laced fingers under the table, and his eyes held a profound, quiet sadness. "The time for games has passed," he said, his voice echoing off the ancient stones. "But do not let the darkness outside extinguish the light you have found within these walls. Cherish each other, for that is the only way we survive." The feast was bittersweet. They ate, but the food tasted like dust. James kept looking up at the rafters, as if trying to memorize the exact shape of the shadows. Sirius didn't make a single joke. The next morning, the Hogsmeade station was a blur of steam and heavy trunks. The scarlet engine hissed, impatient to take them away. On the platform, Hayley turned to look back at the castle. The sun hit the Gryffindor tower, making it glow like a beacon. "We're not coming back, are we?" she whispered. Remus pulled her close, his chin resting on the top of her head. "Not as children, Hayley. Never as children again." The train ride home was quiet. The Marauders sat in their usual compartment, but instead of planning pranks, they sat in a circle, their knees touching, watching the Scottish Highlands melt into the English countryside. When the train finally pulled into King's Cross, the parting felt like a physical amputation. They hugged long, desperate embraces that whispered "stay alive" without saying the words. The transition from the gray smoke of the station to the golden light of Potter Manor happened in a heartbeat, or so it felt. Weeks of frantic planning and war briefings culminated in a single, breathless Saturday in August. The wedding of James Potter and Lily Evans was a middle finger to the rising dark. James stood beneath a canopy of white roses that Hayley had enchanted to bloom and wither in a cycle of eternal spring. When Lily appeared, her red hair vibrant against the white silk of her dress, James didn't just smile. He looked like he had finally found the North Star. "I, James Fleamont Potter, take you, Lily Evans." His voice was a vow of protection, a promise that as long as he breathed, she would be safe. Sirius stood behind him, his hand resting briefly on James's shoulder, a silent testament to a brotherhood that had survived even the darkest corridors of Hogwarts. The reception was a dream. Fleamont and Euphemia danced a slow, graceful waltz, looking at their children with a terrifyingly beautiful pride. Sirius and Iris spun each other dizzy on the grass, their laughter momentarily drowning out the fear of the future. Remus and Hayley stood on the balcony, watching the moon rise, but not a threat tonight, but a witness. "To the Potters," Sirius roared, raising a glass of champagne. "To the best of us." For those few hours, they weren't soldiers. They weren't orphans in waiting. They were just young and in love and convinced that light would always win. The morning after the wedding, the house was a hollow shell. The sun rose, but the light felt cold. Hayley woke to a silence that didn't just mean the guests had gone, but it meant the heart of the house had stopped beating. She walked into the hallway, her bare feet cold on the wood, and found James. He was standing outside their parents' bedroom door. He looked back at her, and in his eyes, Hayley saw the end of her childhood. "They're gone, Hayley," he whispered, his voice small and fragile. They had passed away together, peaceful and unaware, the aggressive strain of dragon pox finally claiming the strength they had spent ensuring their children's happiness. The house, which just hours ago had been vibrating with music and Hayley's joyous magic, went utterly, devastatingly still. The enchantments in the walls, the singing kettles, the dancing shadows simply flickered and died. James fell to his knees, and Hayley dropped beside him, burying her face in his neck as they sobbed in the center of their ancestral home. Lily and Iris found them there, two brides still smelling of wedding flowers, stepping into a house that had suddenly become a tomb. Deep within the silent corridors of Hogwarts, a single candle in the Gryffindor common room went out. The golden age was over. The long night had begun.